Welcome to the Glitter Boom Girls podcast. I'm Robbie-Ann McPherson on the East Coast.
And I'm Amy Asbury on the West Coast.
Today's topic, the mysterious world of grown-ups. Right? So
yes.
what I'm thinking, Aim, is like, remember your parents' friends? And like at a party, for example, you'd be around the corner or like behind the chair or something, and you'd hear them talking about something mysterious and crazy and all of the crazy things that you and I thought about. Now, of course, when we grow up, it all makes sense. But through the eyes of, like 8-year-old me, something is like scandalous or crazy, So how about we start with you? Like when you look back at your parents' friends, and all that kind of stuff, what do you remember about some, mysterious grown-up experience that you didn't quite understand?
Well, I find it interesting now looking back because we just kind of, always grew up as, these people are the end all be all of all rules. We need them for, shelter, for food. We need them for everything. Like they know everything. They are magical, and then you see their friends and you're like, okay, there's another set of these people who make rules, but they do it a little bit different. Their house is a little bit different.
Right.
And, you're like, oh, okay, these people are like the rule makers. And we got to do whatever they say, even if it's somebody else's mom. And then you get a little older and yes, you do hear snippets of their conversation and you're like, wait, what does that mean? You know what I mean? And God forbid they get tipsy or something and you hear one of them like laughing too loud and you kind of crawl over there behind the couch. What are they talking about?
Right.
And I would always hear snippets, Rob. I would always go, wait, what does that mean? And I can't remember what the snippets were, but I would always try to piece it together in my head and it would be some like really strange. I wondered about their secret world because they always you could tell when they would signal to each other or they would spell out a word, that we weren't supposed to hear it. And we were like, I always wondered about their magical secret world.
Well, I can remember specifically whenever my parents had some kind of get together or party or whatever, I remember hearing the drama, like, so-and-so's divorce or, well,
you would hear stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. And
wait, like what?
Well, like,
so-and-so's divorce. Oh my gosh.
Like,
I never even heard the good stuff.
Like even as a little kid, 7, I mean, I was pretty perceptive as a kid, I have to say. So I picked up a lot of things that my parents probably thought they were hiding from me. But my dad, his favorite saying to me, and it became a joke through my childhood, was somebody you don't know. Because my parents would be talking in code, like,
right.
Well, she packed her bags and she moved out. And she's staying with her sister. And when I talked to her yesterday, she, and it was like, and I'd be like, who? And Dad would go, somebody you don't know. But I could start to piece together like, somebody's like getting a divorce or splitting up or, and I know my parents didn't mean to do this, but, and I probably saw enough of it on TV anyway, but I heard a lot. I heard a lot about, mostly the most common one was, well, he was 3 sheets to the wind. Like that was a whole, there was a lot of drunkenness.
I did hear that too. That is one I did hear at the summer barbecues on my father's side, all of my aunts. And I've told you guys this before, but I just remember that. I do remember one snippet. He smelled like a brewery. Remember that? I was like, brewery. Oh, that's beer. Because we did live by the Anheuser-Busch headquarters off the 405. So I'm like, oh, beer. He's drunk. I figured out that one.
Oh, yeah.
But so what other snippets? It sounds like your mother had some really good ones.
Yeah. Our version of that was he was 3 sheets to the wind. And then another one was like if my mom was on the phone, you know, I eavesdropped on my mother. Sorry, mom. I eavesdropped on my mother all the time on the phone. And it wasn't like I wasn't telling anybody. You know, I was not a little gossip.
She
Um
had she had interesting info. You had to listen. You were Harriet the spy. You were Robbie-Ann the spy.
yeah, cuz it was like and that's what this episode is about, right? Like you hear a little phrase and all of a sudden you're like
Right.
ding, and then you start trying to figure out like where it's going. And my mom, she'd be, I mean, back in the day, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking Gen X days, so the phone is plugged into the wall, right? So you have to
Oh, of
either walk
course.
around with it, or if it's a wall phone, you're kind of chained to the wall. But in our one house we had this one regular like Ma Bell dial phone by the
What color was it?
it was the nude color, like the buff
Oh,
color. I know.
and the
And
curly cord, of course.
yes, but we had a super long phone cord. Like my dad intentionally got that because he wanted to be able to bring the phone outside, and like through the window, when he was barbecuing or whatever. I don't know. It was the 70s. So my mom, she would take the phone and she would sit either at the dining room table or she would sit, we had this bay window thing, and so she would sit there and smoke her cigarettes, and on the phone. And I
What
would
did she smoke?
you know what, I don't know, parliaments maybe. They were some kind of, I hated the smell. They smelled so bad, and they weren't like a heavy duty thing. It wasn't like like a heavy duty cigarette. I'll have to ask her and report back. But
So she was on the buff phone,
yeah,
the
she was
the
on the
dial
buff
phone.
colored beige, like taupe, the taupe colored phone, and so she'd be smoking her cigarette, staring out the window, and this is all I would hear. Uh huh. Oh, I know it. I know it. Well, I think she's been, eating her problems. I mean, I
Oh,
think she's just been, she tells me she goes out, and like that was always the tone. It was like, and then there'd be this pause, and then she'd be like, "Oh, I know it. Oh," and then it would launch into something about like my dad and the other woman's husband, right? So you could tell, like, even though I only heard half the conversation, you could tell that they were talking about their husbands. And she would get real cryptic because she knew I was
yeah,
listening.
right.
And she knew I was a smart little kid, so I would figure stuff out, but I still did. So you'd hear this, well, you know, over here, I mean, I told him, I said, and then she'd see me and she'd be like, well, the idea was, and she'd try to explain around whatever. And, it was like typical Gen X parent stuff. Like my dad came home late, drinking with the boys or whatever, or, some work thing and he was upset about it. And, well, I don't know. He wouldn't tell me and he was all cranky. And there was just a lot of like complaining and, you know, I mean, I think, for example, Aim, I think about when you and I are on the phone, like
Yes.
any given time, most of our conversation, we might have a problem to solve, but we kind of work towards solving it. And then we talk about like hopes and dreams and positive things and right? Like our
Well, yeah, we're not
conversations.
total yentas like your mom. Your mom's a
Yeah,
total yenta.
right. But like I never once heard my mom saying to a friend, in the tone of, you know what? I was thinking it would be really fun to start
Right.
like a book club or maybe bicycle, or do you have a bike? Let's go bike ride. Like I never heard any of that. It was always like, well, and then she shows up with these pants that are 3 sizes too tight. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, it was always like stuff like that. And I really think it's kind of generational maybe. I don't know. What like when your mom was on the phone, what were you hearing?
You know what? I didn't hear anything from my mom on the phone, but I did like that she was attached to that phone because then I knew, okay, she's on the phone. She can't come in the other rooms right now. That's when I'd go sneak candy or
Oh,
like go do something because she's trapped to that phone cord.
right,
And
right,
when you hear them stop talking, you go back into your room or whatever, you know?
right.
I'm like, oh, she's on the phone. I'm going to go run and get a popsicle, you know, or whatever. So I didn't sit there and listen really until I was a little older. And she wouldn't sit on the phone and do that. She would go with her friends off into another room. Like they would come over and
Oh,
they would completely leave the room, completely leave the room. So I never really heard anything.
oh, that's a drag. Yeah,
But my
I heard
aunts,
way
I
too
heard
much.
all kinds of
Oh,
things. Yeah.
what
And
was
it was
okay? So what happened with your aunt?
I had a set of aunts on my father's side, and they just were all, they sounded exactly, gosh, I guess it's not your mother's, it was the same tone.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, she walked in that room and that skirt was so short, you know. But they talked more like this. She walked into that room and that skirt was so short and she sat on a stool, you know, or stuff like that. It was like people's outfits, people were drunk. Um, I never really heard like a fair, or else I couldn't figure it out. But when I was, I'd say 11, you know, when they'd all start gossiping like that, my mother never really did. I never really heard her gossip,
Oh, that's
but
interesting.
I would use the time when they were all chatting. She'd sit there though, you know, to go look. My aunt had HBO or one of those that just came out on cable, and that was the Playboy channel. So I would run and try to catch like boobs and stuff. You know how it would be all scrambled?
Right.
And I'd sit there in my bathing suit for like hours trying to catch like something going on to try to figure out what it was.
Yeah, because you could usually hear the audio, right? The
Yes.
picture was
I was like,
scrambled, but you could hear the audio.
because I was like kind of starting to get boobs, so I was so curious, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I'd see like people kissing and stuff, and so I'd hear them outside like, well, another thing, you know, he had a blackhead the size of, and I'm like looking for the, you know, the boobs in my swimsuit.
Yeah, it seemed like mom didn't really get into skin problems, I don't think. Um, like I didn't hear her talking about blackheads and stuff, but
I hear them going, I just get that thing, I need that thing out of my face right now,
which
you know.
that kind of fits in LA though, right? Like
I
here,
guess.
there was a lot about people's changing weights,
Oh,
people's losing weights, or like if someone gained weight, it was met with disapproval.
of
You know,
course.
um, well, she looks like she's put on 10 pounds. I mean, just since I saw her at Christmas, like stuff like that. Or if people lost weight. Well, I mean, she was so thin. I looked at her and I thought, oh my God, I didn't recognize her. Like that. And listen, this isn't just my mom. This is like the tone
This
of her
is
whole
the
group.
grown-ups. This is the
Yeah, this is
world
grown
of
ups.
grown-ups.
Yeah.
And
Now,
this is what we heard.
so there was a lot of emphasis, and probably looking back now, I'm guessing that was probably just because, my mom was in her 30s,
She's
and
probably bored. She's like,
yeah, but like
yeah,
all the women, I'm sure, were looking around at each other, like, comparing, whose butt is small or big or whatever. And
right.
that seemed to be a big deal. And then there were the relationship things, like, and if my mom was privy to me, like if I came in the room and she was in the middle of a sentence, she'd go, well, I heard that when he went away on the business trip, hold on, there are little ears in the room. I'd just kind of walk by like nonchalantly and go into the kitchen and get some cereal and walk by, but it was like I'm doing the side eye, like the puppet in the meme, like I'm listening every single word, and I'm like eating my cereal, computing, like, what does this mean? Connecting dots. But the funny thing was, when you looked at okay, like let's set the stage. So
Okay.
summer barbecue party, okay, and we have a house on the water. It was I can't even tell you. I feel so blessed to have lived in this house for even a short period of time in my
Is that
childhood.
the quarry one?
Yes, the quarry house.
Yes.
So a beautiful old kind of stone cabin, and my parents had a lot of great summer parties there, and people would swim, and we had canoes and all this stuff.
You had
Oh
canoes?
yeah, yeah. Like
How
I could paddle a
lovely.
mean canoe. I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh, this is so lovely. Okay, I love this
Yeah,
scene
and
that you're
and
setting.
dogs. Like people would bring their dogs, and there's a lot of
Oh, this
hot
is
dogs
so
and stuff.
lovely.
And my dad would have the cooler full of ice and beer outside, and he's
What kind
standing
of
there.
beer?
Uh, what kind of beer? Well, there was a beer here in Buffalo called Genesee Cream Ale
Oh my.
that I saw a lot of. Okay, and when I remember being, I don't know, 19 or something before I tried my first Genny Cream Ale. And no offense to the great Genny Cream Ale, but I couldn't drink the stuff. But my dad loves it. So anyway, there'd be these coolers full of Genny Cream Ale and Pabst Blue Ribbon too. If you're looking for a quality beer, Pabst Blue Ribbon. And if you looked at the two groups, so here's the groups of the ladies,
Okay.
right? And they've all got a cigarette in one hand, with the fingers bent, and they're like brushing their hair with the, one finger with the cigarette held out.
And
And
what kind of hair styles were these in your head?
well, this would have been the late 70s. So there were a lot of perms, a
Oh.
lot of a lot of perms.
Yeah, my mother
Um,
did get that big old perm with some bangs.
yeah, the
She had like the
Ogilvy.
Jennifer Grey in Dirty Dancing. Like that was my mom's hair.
Oh, yeah, there was some of that, but this was more like this was a lot of a ton of hairspray. Like every
Oh, that early? That even in the late
oh
70s.
yeah, yeah. Well, because remember, Buffalo is kind of behind a lot of the fashion. We usually lag about 10 years behind in
So it
fashion
wasn't
trends.
like the Charlie's Angels, the feathered, because I feel like all of
There
my
were
aunts had the
some.
feathered long hair with like big curls on the bottom,
Yeah,
like
if
parted
one
down the
of
middle.
right, if one of my dad's friends showed up with like a young hip girl, and then she'd go to the bathroom. Well, did you see? I mean, could her pants be any tighter? Could those shorts be any shorter? I mean, they're sitting there with these, and she's got these high heels on. It's a barbecue. And all these chicks have like their sneakers and stuff. Um, there were a lot of glasses, like the big rim,
Big,
big frames, right, with the
big frames.
plastic, like not sunglasses, mind you, but just
Oh,
regular
glasses, glasses.
glasses. Yeah,
Yeah.
glasses, huge, giant glasses. There were remnants of the 60s. Like there were some women
Uh-huh.
who would show up and they've been doing their hair the same way for 15
Oh,
years.
interesting.
Okay, so
Okay.
they had like the 60s helmet. And then there
Yeah.
were others that were hip, to the
Okay.
disco thing and had the feathers. My mom usually had, actually always, she had short hair.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes she would curl it with a curling iron. She did have a few unfortunate perms. Just not. But I'll tell you what was universal:
What?
frosted tips, the cap, the cap. All of the chicks had some version of the painted. You pull your hair through all these holes in the cap, and then you put this frosted bleach stuff over it, and you sit there with this swimming cap and your hair sticking out of it. And then so it was like this frosted tip thing. And then, so here's the group of them
Yeah.
over here, right, with the cigarettes, and they would have beers and all that too.
Mm-hmm.
And then over here by the grill are the
Yeah.
guys, right? So here's my dad. He's got the spatula in one hand, the beer in the other. And all the guys are standing around with their cutoffs and they all had like ratty baseball shirts, like jersey shirts and plain colored t-shirts, like a navy blue plain t-shirt that was just beat to hell, because it was a summer barbecue, right? And here's the difference. This is what my little, like, I would sit inside and I would stare out the window, right? And with my
Right.
eagle ears, like listening to everything. So the women are all over here going, well, and then she said, and then I said it, and they would always be like, shh, 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 as somebody walked by. But the men were laughing their asses off,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So they were,
Mm-hmm.
you'd hear this, and then he blah, blah, blah. And they'd all laugh. And then they'd all play off the joke. Yeah. And then he goes, blah, blah, blah. Oh, God, what an asshole. Like, that's how they were. Right. And then you'd look over at the ladies and they're all just going, well, and then one of them was always in a fight. There was always a couple that was like on the outs, or they had a fight in the car, or sometimes it was my own parents. But, so the women would be like, look at him over there. He's just laughing. I'm telling you, I almost killed him in the car over here, and they're puffing on their cigarettes. He tells me, do you know what his mother said? Oh, that was another big thing, the mother-in-law. His mother tells me, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't even believe I have any sense of like a healthy relationship after I've seen what these.
You just painted that so funny though, because I can see. And then what music was playing, if any?
Oh, Steve
Like
Miller
on the radio.
Band, Rolling Stones.
Yep.
Like the rock side of classic rock. Like no Beatles. We were not a Beatles household. I love the Beatles, but we were not a Beatles household. We were like blues-based rock. So the Who, the Rolling Stones. My dad got into Cat Stevens.
That was probably the biggest thing in my house was Cat Stevens and the Beatles.
Really?
Actually, yeah. Both.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So at your house, what's on the grill?
We'd go over to this one certain uncle's house like every single weekend. This is my father's side. Every man is wearing no shirt at all. They all have a hairy chest, and they're just wearing shorts.
Yeah,
like it's so hot. Mm-hmm. It's California, Southern California. There's a pool, the grill, just burgers and hot dogs, and they're playing like that side of the family. They played a lot of like Oak Ridge Boys, like Juice Newton. It was like country kind of. I think.
Yeah,
Gale and Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, like the early '80s country.
My father was more into all the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper. Like he was one of those people where I don't think he really cared about. He liked Bob Dylan a lot. But anyway, that one uncle was into country, so that's what you would hear. And the guys had no shirts. They all had a mustache. They all had like poofy hair kind of. And gosh, who did they all look like? Who's somebody from back then? You know that look. Like kind of long
Magnum
hair
PI
parted
look?
down the middle. Yeah, a little bit parted down the middle, kind of curled back and feathered with a mustache.
Yeah.
Either curly or Magnum PI looking, shorts, beer, Budweiser, plain Budweiser. And then the cooler would be full of Shasta. And RC Cola for the rest of us. Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Every kind of Shasta. And the ladies, clogs, wedges, cork, a lot of that kind of shoe. And swimsuit tops and like beige shorts, but they all had parted down the middle Jaclyn Smith hair.
Oh,
like
nice. Okay.
Yeah, everybody had like that hair in my Southern California barbecue memories. So there'd be a blonde version of that, a redhead version of that, but it'd be like the Farrah Fawcett kind of hair and like tube tops, crazy, like tiny outfits and a cigarette and very long nails in many shades of maroon, burgundy, red, brick, it was always some kind of dark red.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not start to see the long nails until after my parents got divorced.
Wow.
My mom never had like long fake nails or anything. And most of her friends, I just don't remember seeing them. Now, I don't know if that's because in Buffalo that wasn't really the thing until, until like the 80s. But when I was a kid, yeah, most of the women, and a lot of the women had side jobs, like they bartended somewhere or they waited tables.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're, these are young couples, right? So, and my parents included, like, struggling. I mean, in spite of the house that we lived in, which my dad was sort of caretaking the property, so that's why we got to live there. But, yeah, the nails, again, there'd be that one chick, right, that somebody brought, and all the guys would be like, oh, hey, and and again, my mom, well, she's got those long fingernails. I mean, I don't know how she does anything with those long nails. I mean, how do you do dishes? And but the other thing is, okay, so let's set the stage too. So okay, we're at barbecue at your house, right? And so the
Yes.
guys are over here with the no shirts, and you're like peering out the window or whatever. Or wait, are
Yes.
you sitting with them or are you peering out the window?
No, I'm in the pool
Oh, okay, all right, all
with my
right,
sister, and there's no other kid there. Not a kid to be found. It's
right?
just us.
Yes,
And it's like 50,000 aunts and uncles
yeah,
and Kenny Rogers
okay,
playing on the boombox. Yeah.
yeah. I was
And it's the radio, because that back then, you're outside, there's no record player outside or 8-track player,
right.
but it's the radio. So,
So okay, if it was a nighttime party, there were probably no other kids, but a couple of my parents' friends, like I'll shout out my friend Jennifer. Her dad and my dad were friends in high school,
wow.
so she would often accompany her parents when they came over for these parties. So she and I would run around and play, and then my uncle and my aunt would often bring, shout out Michelle, my cousins over, and my cousin and I grew up like sisters. We were very very close. So we would run around and play. Sometimes it was Jennifer and Michelle and me. But if it was a nighttime party, then yeah, that was me like, lurking in the dark and listening to all the conversations. But what were they driving? Like when these people pulled up, what was everybody driving?
Like a Buick, Oldsmobile,
Oh,
just like
really?
a standard, like, I don't know if these are good or bad cars, but this is just what I remember, like that standard brown car or a maroon car,
Yeah, like a
like
sedan.
four-door
Yeah,
sedan.
okay.
Everybody had a sedan.
Oh, that's
One family had
interesting.
a station wagon, actually, but they were the ones that were the most laid back. But
Wow.
yes.
My
Mm-hmm.
okay, now that surprises me because I would figure out there in LA like, a lot of sports cars or people,
Well, there's one
driving.
family that had the Corvette.
Oh,
And they had like the mom was like very, large bosom, very skinny and long blonde hair. And then the dad was like really, really flirty with everybody. So they were the ones
right.
like the more of the flashy couple.
I mean, one summer she shows up and her boobs were twice the size. Don't tell me she didn't have a boob job. I know
Ooh.
she had a boob job. You know she had a boob job. Where did she go to get a boob job? That would be the, even though they have no knowledge. Um, my parents had a bunch of those people. Now, did all the guys go out and gather around the Corvette and like stand there with their beers and nod?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
oh, okay. What kind of
I-
engine you got in there? Like that
If
kind of
they
stuff.
had a beer, a Budweiser, they could stand around a pile of garbage and it would be like the best conversation ever. Like they just planted themselves somewhere and they would only leave to get another beer and they would drink all. And then my uncle, this is the other side of the family, but my uncle Ray, he had like a mullet, like a permed mullet, and he would wear these little dolphin running shorts in like December. He always had these tiny shorts on and a cigarette and like a tank top, like a hang 10 tank top. He was always around a pool. He was always like, "Oh, that's cool." Like the house could be burning down and he'd go, "Cool." Like he was always just so cool. He never like budged. He just smoked his cigarette in his running shorts with like a tiny tank top. Yeah,
And what did
rain,
he do?
shine.
What did these people do for work?
Well, Uncle Ray was a drummer and he was like in some band. I think he toured with like Journey and all, he was like a studio drummer or something. But the other people, what did they do? I don't even know. I don't even know. One of them was a CPA. One of them was a, gosh, guys, I don't know. I should go ask my parents.
What did you think they did? Like when
I
you were a
never
kid?
like I never like gave a I just was like, "Oh, they're grown-ups. They leave the house and they come back." Like I don't even know what anybody did.
Oh, that was a huge obsession with me. Like I wanted to understand cuz some of the people we went to their houses. right? So I
Yes.
knew some
Wasn't
of the
that
people.
interesting?
Yeah, like they'd live in some cool, and when you're a kid, you
So
don't realize, like,
different.
even though I loved my house, I didn't realize how great I had it because it wasn't a neighborhood. So I was a little lonely. If there was
Okay.
one downside to it, I
Sure.
was really lonely. And
Yeah.
everybody else I knew, all the kids I knew lived in some kind of neighborhood. So we would go to like these nice neighborhoods where there were sidewalks and, driveways. And I mean, we had a gravel driveway, no sidewalks, like all that stuff.
Mm.
And some of the people lived in really nice homes, like
Yeah.
homes where, you could tell the furniture and everything was expensive. They drove like a really nice car, like a
Wasn't that interesting to see other lives?
yeah, and I
It was like,
always
wow. Yeah.
wanted to know how how they got that. Like to me it was like,
Oh.
well, what do they do? And most of my parents' friends they had some kind of, like, my dad, he was in construction and rigging and stuff like that and steelwork. And a bunch of his friends were in similar businesses,
Mm-hmm.
like working, they were contractors or some kind of thing like that, welders, I don't know. And then there were others that like sold insurance, you know.
Right. And those are the ones that I just didn't get. So I thought, oh, they go to an office. Like I just, you know,
Yeah, yeah, like I didn't understand. I mean, I knew that they lived in the really, really nice house in a really nice neighborhood and they drove a really nice car. Like, there
mm,
weren't really lawyers, there weren't doctors. It was, a lot of like fellow kind of blue collar friends and people. And I don't mean that in any way detrimental. I mean,
no, but that's just how
yeah,
you grew up.
I'm
That
just
was
saying
it.
that, yeah, that's the type of work they did. And I don't remember anybody being like mean. I don't remember anyone, you know, I don't remember
Like,
any fights, like fist fights. I remember sometimes there would be a fight between a couple and they would storm out and the car would peel out. There were those. Um, and I don't remember people getting super hammered. It was kind of a social thing. There was a lot of like, just a lot of sort of shit talk and stuff like that. A lot of sports talk among the guys. And yeah, and whoever had the nicest car, they would all go to where the cars were parked and they would totally stand around like kicking the dirt with the beers and talking about, what the tires and, this and that. And I have to say, a lot of the men's conversations affected me that way. I mean, I'm still a car head today. Like,
oh,
oh
really?
God, yeah. Yeah. Like if somebody
Well,
pulled
you
up in a
are.
muscle
You
car,
are.
oh my God, I would be down there with them, and I'd be like hanging on to my dad or something and just listening to them talk about horsepower and, 8 cylinders and, some guy. And then there was always like, well, I had it doing 110 on the back road the other day and like all this crazy stuff.
That's so cute.
Yeah, yeah. I really, I don't know. I guess if I were to sum it all up, when I was little, my impression of adults and
Mhm.
adulthood was that you had to work. You were most likely going to do something for money,
Mhm.
working that you didn't enjoy. Like,
Yes, that was the general feeling.
yeah, like working, and that no one was honest with anyone. Like there was so
Wow.
much gossip and talking behind people's backs, and the women, the way they talked about their men, just so bad, so negative. I don't think I ever heard, maybe occasionally if like the hot one showed up, like the guy with the new girlfriend or whatever, she would just sit there and be silent while the other women ragged on their husbands and all that. But I don't know, is that true today? Like, are married people like that today too? Was that generational or is that just marriage? I don't know.
No, no, I think it just depends on what group you're in. I really do. I think this could happen in any generation.
Yeah, that's a
And,
good point.
and how close are you to the people? Do you want to put your business out on Front Street? And people typically do not. I've noticed like they typically don't want to betray they don't tell their business, from my
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah, like you wouldn't
But
sit around at a barbecue and just sit there and,
no,
yeah.
no, I really wouldn't. And I never really heard my mom doing that, to be honest. I didn't hear my mom talk about anybody else's business ever until it was a final thing that would possibly affect us. She'd go, okay, so and so and so and so are getting a divorce. And my sister and I would be absolutely shell shocked because we were like, wait, they're grown-ups. They're not going to, when I first heard what divorce was, because when I was a kid, Reagan put those no fault divorce, put that law into effect, made it way easier for people who were unhappy to get a divorce. There was a lot of divorces all at once, which
Mm-hmm.
is why my generation, while and you too became latchkey kids, the moms were like, I'm out of here. And it was a lot harder to do before our generation. So a lot of people, when Reagan put that into effect, I don't know, 1980 maybe, lots of split ups of my family friends, and it would crush me and it would upset me so much. And that's when I started realizing, oh, these are just people. These people there's flaws. They are not mythical creatures.
Mm-hmm.
At
Yeah.
first, and even your parents, when you notice they mess up, you get to a certain age, 10, 11, you're like, oh, they have flaws. They're actual, they're not, I mean, you knew when they were gossiping, okay, this isn't the coolest thing ever. But I'm sure when you were little, there's a certain point where you get to an age where you're like, oh, these people aren't superheroes. And I always found that kind of like a little bit sad. Like I felt a little deflated when I thought, oh, this person is actually a little bit of a jerk now that I'm older and I'm noticing, or, this person's not very nice to their wife. And like, this kind of bums me out. So that's weird when you realize these people are mere mortals.
Yeah, I hear that. I look back now and, if I really remember some of those parties or those conversations, I start to see which one of those, like which one of the women were just miserable and,
Mm,
which ones of the men were kind of goofy or, whatever it is. And you're right. It's because when you're little, you think that your parents' opinions are the
yeah,
opinion. Like you think
it's
well,
law.
that's how it, yeah, that's how it is. And well,
Huh?
my mom says that this is it, even though her friend says X and my mom says Y. Well, it's got to be Y because my mom's got to be right. Right. And same with my dad.
Correct.
And my parents, when you know what I mean? You and I should do a divorce episode, right?
Yeah.
We should talk about
Yeah,
that.
you should.
Because I think of more than anything in Gen X globally, whatever that affected how we all grew up. Not that we're all the
It's a
same,
big
but
thing.
the
Well, it was a
similarities.
big thing.
Yeah, being children of divorce, just because it's common, doesn't mean that it's easy or that it doesn't have a profound effect on how you develop, especially if they divorce when you're of a certain age, 10, 11, 12, which is often when it happens. People's marriages might burn out after 14 years or something. So I think that's an interesting take on it. And I do remember, I remember at some point when I was an adult, realizing that there weren't, like, you didn't have to look for bad things in people and negatives and well, she showed up with this or that. Like I realized I'm not a real judgmental person.
You
I'm just,
never say things like that. I've never heard you say one thing like that
yeah,
about anybody. So
I'm not
good for
like
you.
that. Yeah, I'm just not. And I realized I heard a lot of it growing up, not just from my mom, but the adults all around me. And so, yeah, there was some point probably in my, I don't know when, my 20s or whatever, where I'm like, wow, you know what? I don't have to engage in that kind of stuff. Like I don't have to sit there and judge people. I'm not saying I'm totally above,
Not
having a
at all.
moment of
No,
gossip or whatever, but
no.
Yeah, that was something weird to realize that is an adult behavior that, uh, kids learn that from their parents, I think, too. And I don't know. I'd have to figure that out because, kids do that right on the playground, but they say it to your face. Look at
I,
you. You got this or that.
that's the ones whose dad is yelling at them at home. I
Right.
noticed when I was a kid, my mom was she had a friend who had a different style than her, and her friend was super positive. It was hyper the other way. She was like, "Let's take the kids to a apple orchard, let's take the kids to." She'd find everything. And my mom, I said, "We did so many fun things when we were kids." And she goes, "That was all Katie. That was her. All that stuff we did was her." And I look back on her style, and she was always very happy to see us. The house was it wasn't some spotless, velvet, it was like dogs were everywhere, and it was kind of happy. It was, she had boys. It was my favorite place to be because it was just, she was always smiling and happy and like, let's bake cakes today. Let's take the kids to, we would go all these places and she had the best ideas. And I kind of designed my life after her style, believe it or not. My mother was always afraid of everything. She was always afraid of everything. So, and I didn't realize that till I got older. Like, oh, she doesn't take risks. She'd rather hide. She's not
Yeah.
like that anymore. She does a lot of things now. She travels all over the world now. But you know,
Just in time.
yeah, in time, she got over it. She went through a crazy divorce and kind of changed as a person, as people do. But
Right.
when I was a child, she was very meek and she was always kind of hiding, and other people took the lead. So this woman, yeah, she made everything really magical.
Yeah,
Let's do a
you do
science
that.
experiment. Yeah,
No,
and I
that's
really
totally
like
you.
that style.
Yeah, you are that
Like, let's look
person.
for the most beautiful thing and go do it. Like,
Yeah.
why not? You know what I mean? And it was never like some crazy expensive, let's go to Hawaii. It wasn't like that. It was just
Yeah.
lovely. It was really fun. Like, hey, let's go down and watch the torch for the 84 Olympics. Let's all go down there and let the kids watch the guy run by with the torch. It was always just like some cool thing.
Oh,
And it was always seasonal. So I liked looking at the way grown-ups did things that were different than my family also,
mm-hmm.
because it gave me really great ideas. And then there was the family who had this perfect house, and the mom was, I was scared of her. Don't touch that cow, don't sit there, and you see that style too.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of different styles, and some of them were just really lovely and fun and beautiful. We had friends, the Luxembourgs. They were like our beach friends. We'd always go to the beach, and they had a different setup. It was very um, beautiful in their home, but you still could touch everything. They had a beautiful shiny dog. They had a hammock that we'd swing on in the backyard, and there was flowers everywhere. Just different episodes I would go into. I'd be like, oh, this is another land with these people, and I feel good here. So it was neat. So I did like a lot of the people, the grown-ups I saw as a kid.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? What an
Hmm.
effect they have. I mean, all these years
Big
later,
effect.
right? And that like in the fun sense, we did some fun stuff. But it was usually driven by my parents' interests. Like my mom wanted to go see the King Tut exhibit up when King Tut toured in the 70s,
Uh-huh.
and the big sarcophagus and all that. And we went up to Toronto to see it, and that was a huge impact on me. I was I kept looking at these little alabaster things and going, "Oh my god, that's 3,000 years old." Like I couldn't process it. And the sarcophagus in person was stunning. That
I
was
think we
cool.
saw that too, actually. We went to every single museum with that one mom was like had us at every museum all the time.
Yeah,
And it was
that's
lovely.
cool. I know, and you are like that. You're totally like that. I think I'm a little bit like that, but I don't have kids, so but like when I go somewhere, I want to see, hey, you want to do this? Want to
Hmm.
see that? Want to look at that?
That's why
Yeah.
you and I travel well together. We have that same thought. Like,
Yeah.
let's experience something.
Right, right. But
Let's
we
try to eat
also
something interesting.
yeah, but we respect the other person's energy level,
Sure.
cuz right, like part of that is it's exhausting. That life is exhausting, right? And there's a certain moment where you're just like, oh my God, I'm wiped out.
Yeah,
But
when you burn out. I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
do it. I can only do anything for 2 hours. I don't want to be anywhere for longer than 2 hours. I tell my
yeah.
friends, you
This
can
is
invite me
why I
over, but
no
I'm
longer attend music festivals. It's
too
just
much. But yeah, I just want to live, you know. But I do think one thing about the children of divorce, I've noticed in the neighborhood I'm in, everybody is still together
oh
because they all
wow.
got married when they were like 30.
Yeah, okay.
Everybody my age in this neighborhood is mom, dad, and kids. And all the kids growing up now have no idea what it was like because people waited and picked somebody they knew they would stay with because they were way older. They got, I don't
Yeah.
know why. I don't know why. But I have a neighborhood, you guys, full of two-parent families
Wow.
and a dog. And these kids just like like I'm like, wow, they're not going to get their life like completely upended. It's very different now. A lot of our generation did not want to repeat that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, you're certainly, I mean, you are that, like, you're my hero in that sense, right? Where you work really hard to make stuff fun. So whatever influence Katie, that lady, had on you, that's pretty cool. I think my
Yeah.
uncle did a lot. Um, like, I remember going to the Science Museum in Rochester. My uncle, he was real into crazy stuff like that. So I think there were a lot of neat things. Like, we went to these bat caves and did some fun stuff. So that's fun. But I definitely I think it's a fascinating topic to look at the other adults in our lives, and how they really influenced us. So
And a little, I know we are running out of time or we are out of time, but this is kind of a little thing I will add at the end. You guys have heard my stories of how I turned into a complete bad girl, like the complete opposite of everything we're talking about right now. And one of the catalysts of that was when I was 14, I was snooping through my mother's jewelry box or her little letters, and there was a letter in there from Katie. And it said all these mean things about me that I needed to be disciplined. I had a big mouth. Like, she just trashed me. And it pretty much destroyed my psyche. Yeah, and I thought people don't like me. Oh my gosh, I'm obnoxious. And it destroyed me. And my parents were getting divorced maybe a month or two after I found that letter. And those two things combined, I was just like, I sunk into a little shell of a human because that was my idol. You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
And my mother and she had stopped talking. And I was like, oh, that's why they don't talk. Because my mom hopefully was like, that's my daughter. What am I going to do? But my mother never disciplined us. She didn't know how to do it. So maybe I was mouthy or,
Yeah.
yeah, she didn't, she trashed me.
Wow.
Like,
Was she trying to trash your mother's parenting and then you were
yes,
collateral damage, or was she
yes.
actually trashing you?
No, she was trashing my mother's parenting, which my
Okay.
mother didn't parent because she just didn't realize you had to. Like, oh, you have a kid and there they are.
Right.
Um, and we rented a video camera when I was 14, and I couldn't wait to go over and film their house because it was my favorite place in the world. I loved it more than Disneyland. So we went over there. She wasn't home, and I filmed everything I loved. I had grown up in her home. And when she heard about it, she was furious because she thought I was like making fun of it, like how messy it is or something. But I loved it. I loved exactly how it was, everything about it. But she felt very vulnerable about someone filming her home, I guess. Like, she didn't appreciate that, and she was upset with my mother for allowing me to do that. But I just, it was like a shrine to me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Wow,
But yeah,
that had to be really, really. I have similar stories, but I know we're out of time. We can.
yeah, and it destroyed me. So it does, like people's parents. Yeah, and then my mother came in. She said, "We're not talking to them anymore. You can talk to them when you're adults."
And
And we
so,
were like,
have you
"What?"
ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about reaching out to her?
I have, I
Oh,
have.
you have reached
I
out to her?
I've reached out to her. That was back in the late '80s.
Oh,
And
okay.
over
So,
the years, I found her again. I've written her letters. I saw her at a wedding. I'm Facebook friends with her right now, actually.
and did you ever discuss the letter?
No, no.
Really? So you never
I
said
just
to
yeah,
her?
it hurts me too much. Yeah, and I could tell. I always kind of remember her looking at side eyeing my mother, like, "Will you spank these kids?" Like,
Oh, but I wonder what would happen if you told her, and because I bet you now that, especially now that she realizes what a, beautiful person you've grown up to be, I can't imagine that she wouldn't say, oh, give you some explanation. Like, oh, yeah, well, because maybe your mom criticized her. And so that was like a response, with her going, oh, yeah, you think oh, yeah, well, how about you? And you're.
well, Katie's husband was very, very. He was a Marine, former Marine, so was very militant and very, very into discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very opposite from my laid back hippie parents. They had a
Yeah,
different style. They were like, oh,
right.
whatever. Um, no, I don't want to bring it up. Like I could tell she doesn't like. I saw her at a wedding and she was like, oh, here, because I said, let's sit on that side. Oh, let's sit on this side. And then she was like, here we go. And I
Oh,
went, oh, okay, you still think of me a certain way. I'm just gonna, whatever, cool.
yeah, you
So,
know what? I'm too, I don't know well, I do know who I get this from. My grandpa, on my mother's side. I'm too confrontational. I don't mean it in an angry way, but I'm the first person, like if something's bothering me like that, and I'm not saying it's the right thing to do because sometimes it's not, but I'll be
yeah,
like, hey, you know what? Remember blah, blah, blah. And, but I get it. Like if she's got a wall up,
it's too far down the line.
yeah,
I don't mind
yeah,
confronting people if the time is right, but this one is too many years and decades in the making. So I thought, okay, well, I'll respect
right.
whatever. And that was the first person I called actually when I got breast cancer. And I called and said, am I going to die? And she said, well, we're all going to die. And I hung up the phone and I just burst into tears. Like that was my one call. Like, tell me it's going to be okay.
She's
So
like,
I just,
nope.
yeah. And I just had a weird thing about it. But yeah, I think these people become these myths in our head sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
you're a kid and you're looking at them and, it's just this another family member almost. So it's
Right.
interesting and this is one of the people that I grew up and I thought, okay, this is a whole other person with a whole other life with different experiences who grew up a completely different way. I have to
Mm-hmm.
allow this person their life. And they're not right, they're not wrong, they have their own thoughts. And that's one of those weird things when you've known somebody as a child and you know them as an adult. It's just one of those weird things.
Yeah. Well, and it also, honestly, it speaks to what a what an evolution you've had since you read that letter, for example, because you have the grace and the intuition, and the sensitivity to say, well, it might make me feel better if I confronted her, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe she's just not in that place, and so I'm just going
Yeah.
to move on and deal with it. Like that's a pretty evolved, mature way to handle something, and maybe she's thinking that too. Like I don't want her to bring it up. Oh, thank God she didn't bring it up.
I don't think
But
she knows that I ever saw that letter. She has no clue.
oh wow, oh my gosh, that's interesting. Something for everybody, all of us to think about, I guess. Like how we speak about the children around us. I mean, obviously parenting comes with a whole like set of rules, but just like your friends' kids and things like that. Like I just always assumed I was someone they rolled their eyes at, so I
Really?
never really thought about having any impact. But maybe, who knows? Maybe some kid, saw something in me, and I don't think I've ever said anything bad about any of them. But that's, I don't know. That makes me think.
Yeah.
Well, this was a good session, Aim. I feel like we should send each other a
Yeah.
copay.
Right?
But we want to thank you guys for listening to us. And you can find us, I don't know where you're listening to us right now, but we're on all kinds of podcast platforms and Spotify and Audible and all that stuff. And we're also on YouTube. So you can tune in on YouTube. All of our podcasts are there, in addition to some extra content. Like if we're talking about a commercial or a song or something, we have a playlist of extra content. And we're on Twitter, Glitter Bee Girls. And we're on Instagram, Glitter Bee Girls. We also have a website, glitterboongirls.com. Let's make a little rap song, right? Because it's the Glitter Boom. Yeah. All right,
Yeah, I
well,
need my flow.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks, you guys. We appreciate you hanging out. I'm Robbie-Ann McPherson on the East Coast.
I'm Amy Asbury on the West Coast.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.